Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm delighted to be here in conversation with Mark Cousins, the brilliant filmmaker who has made this brilliant film. I'll start with some questions for Mark, but we will, of course, want to hear. I know there's some Willie fans in the audience and probably a lot of Mark fans as well. Mark, I'm not going to ask you the most obvious question first because your mind is too brilliant for that. My first question is, and it's a big one, how do you go about thinking of how to represent an epiphany in a film?
God, I have never been asked that before. I'm not surprised. The question, that's part of a bigger thing, I think,
Yeah.
Wendy, which is like, how do you show, how do you be, how do
Interior.
you be innovative?
Mm.
How do you show something in a new way?
Mm.
And when we know, loads of us in the room will have had an epiphany, something that you think, my God, of course, my life has changed in this moment. And that's a kind, and so what you need to do is not under imagine that. That's the mistake that I think you could make. Under imagine it, make it feel as if it's sort of prosaic or something like that. So in this film, there's certain words that I've used, like infection. She was infected like a disease almost, and I think there's a bit something like that. And if you've got a film, there are a lot of words in this film. So there's a moment after she climbs the Alps where we only see the pictures
Go quiet.
and we don't hear any words. And so that's a way of trying to sort of change the voice, as it were.
Have you ever had an epiphany? And did that help you think about what her epiphany might have been like?
Yeah, I think
this is not going to only be a therapy session. I promise.
Yeah, I think I have, and I'm sure I would love to ask the same question of you and everybody in the audience. Yeah, but certainly growing up in Ireland, and in the Troubles in Belfast, and a very Catholic upbringing, I remember my English teacher saying, read everything, but don't read James Joyce. And of course,
what was the first thing you read?
James Joyce.
Okay.
A Portrait of the Artist. And
Okay.
it was totally epiphany. That idea, there's that line in I think it's in Portrait of the Artist. It pained him that he did not know what politics meant, and he did not know where the universe ended. And I was I can feel the tinkle in my body now thinking about it. So yes, that was an epiphany.
Okay, an early epiphany. I love that you start the film with this images of, at the time, just looks like an old lady on holiday.
Yeah.
But immediately you ask the audience to come into this with you. And I love this about some of your films, and not all of them are structured this way, but saying to the audience, what do you see? What are we seeing together? Can you talk about just the relationship you want the audience to have with this film and this woman?
I wanted to start with a kind of prejudice, like what we think an older woman is, what she looks like, how, this old lady with the, unfashionable clothes. You want to start with the prejudice. I think tried to make a film, and if this film is like passionately against ageism and how we see an older older woman, so if you start with that kind of, like, does she look, what do we think an artist looks like? Is this an artist look like, with like a long, and then you say, well, actually, she had such a remarkable imagination. So it's good to start outside a subject, like from a sort of almost prejudicial point of view, and then quite quickly jump into it.
But instead of saying, I see an old lady, you're saying, do we?
Yes.
Can you just maybe expound on how do you want the audience to be an active participant watching this film? Or does it not matter? They can be a passive viewer.
Yeah, active participant. We every day we are discovering things, hopefully, that challenges us, and we want to. An example of this woman, it was remarkable. You remember what I asked at the beginning, like how many of you had known her work, and the number of hands went up. I was totally shocked, but most people haven't heard of Willie Barns-Graham, and so you want to take you want it. It has to be an active thing. It's like crossing a threshold, going into a citadel, and then you think, what's in this citadel? And her work is remarkable. I think you'll hopefully you agree, having seen the film now, and so it's a real pleasure for a filmmaker to take the audience from somewhere where maybe they don't know much about something into the citadel of knowledge, as it were.
And when you're making a film about an artist, how much do you want your film to capture something of the spirit or the form of their art? If you were doing a black and white photographer, would you do it in black and white? Or just with this particular film, does the style of the film need to match her sensibility somehow?
No, I think that's a mistake, don't you, Wendy? I'm sure you would agree.
You would have done lots of little blocks.
Yeah, we've all seen films that try to ape the visual style of the filmmaker, but I think that's kind of superficial thing to do. I needed to be quite detached from her style in a way, and so a lot of the imagery in this picture is on a tripod, wide shot. It's not. Occasionally, in the glacier sequence, we try to get into a more subjective space, but I just don't like those films that try to sort of, in a kind of kitsch way, reproduce the style of the artist.
With capturing the paintings in photographic form, I mean, maybe we'll talk about the after the glacier sequence, when we just see all these paintings and you pair it with the music. Sort of how long did you want the audience to be able to sit with the work? And is there a certain point when you think, oh, that's too long, an audience might get bored, or we'll stretch this out even a little bit longer so people can contemplate this series of works you did? And how did you pick the music that was going to pair with that?
On the first point, it's a crucial question. Like how long, some people think that sequence is too long, when we're after on the glacier and we just see the pictures. But this was 45 years of her life, Wendy, so you want to a slight sense of that. And you also want to get into a sort of possibly feel a bit hypnotic almost about it, and sometimes if you get the rhythm right, the combination of image and music, then you can go for quite a while. I remember seeing, when I was very young, seeing that film Koyaanisqatsi. Do you remember that? Koyaanisqatsi. Do you remember that? And it just, it created a kind of hypnotic state. So that's what we're trying to get to, that sense that maybe we can just look at her pictures, and when you cut, this is the magic of cinema, when you cut between one image and the next image and the next image and the next image, you can see the subtle modifications in her art, so that it's exciting. And also a lot of the pictures we're lucky enough to have somebody who knew Willie very well, Selena, who's here and who's also in the trust, who the custodian of her estate. So when you think of the legacy of her work, it's good just to let it sit on the big screen. And these pictures are often quite small. Some of them, they're just about that size. And we shot with,
lucky to see them so big.
Well, exactly. And we shot with like high res, like 8K.
Oh wow!
Like super high res, which is double the resolution of the biggest scene. So
the biggest IMAX.
It means that some of these images, if you see this on a really big screen, some of these images are nearly, unbelievably, 1 million times bigger than the original. So that's exciting, isn't it? The magnification qualities of cinema. So that's what you want to get into, that kind of space. And on the music, the great composer Linda Buckley, Irish, living in Scotland and Glasgow. She was the head of Conservatoire of Glasgow, classically composed, but punky as hell, and to the gothic imagination. So brilliant working with her.
And you give yourself permission or the freedom to also play around with some of her work, Willie's work, and that's, little animations or little...
Yeah.
How is that a decision that just comes easily? This will be fun to try? Or do you wrestle with that sort of, I guess, the morality of an artist's work existing on its own, and if you're coming in and toying with it a bit.
No, it's good to toy with it.
Okay.
Obviously the work is the work, isn't it? So the work is always there.
Yeah.
But this is this is a movie, and so
Yeah.
you want to play with that. And she's talking, and some of those animations where the red blocks are moving. She talks about the fact that these pictures are about crowds and being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you can't be shy. You can't be too respectful. You need to go for it.
Yeah. This would maybe be a very boring film if it was just the respectful version. Nobody needs that, I think. I think it's really interesting that you quite boldly say how you think her brain works, or in some ways. And I'm curious, you also compare your own brain to her brain at some points. And what's that process like? I mean, how do you even attempt to, somebody you hadn't met, you might have been in the same room in Edinburgh at some point, but you don't think you've met officially. If somebody tried to tell me what my brain was like, I would probably fight it. How do you get into somebody else's brain? And not just the research, but maybe just some reflection time. Do you take a couple of days and walk around a forest and think, or go see a glacier? Or how do you try to even get into that headspace where you can think about somebody else's brain?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the question of, you could be cautious and respectful, or you could just go for it. I saw her, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned in the film, I saw her work in the late 80s, and I thought, my God, there's something there, and you've got affinity sometimes with other people, like the shock of recognition of another person who seems to have a same geometric sense of the world, but also poetic sense of the world, and I just thought, oh my goodness, there's a like-minded spirit, and so why not go for that? Why not try to see the world from her point of view? And what I can do is visual thinking. I think my work well, but a lot of my work is about visual thinking, and you see this amazing woman and how great a visual thinker she is, and that's kind of boundaryless, Wendy. It's that the jump the fence. Like, visual thinking isn't a remarkable thing, and you can see it in other people.
And you got to hold these notebooks, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because you probably have too, got to hold Bergman's notebook from Fanny and Alexander. You've seen those notebooks in Stockholm. And it almost felt like quasi-religious, or I shouldn't be holding this, or what a deep honor to even hold somebody's notebook. How did you feel seeing her notebooks? The first gut feeling, and then maybe we'll talk about how you use them and read them, but just the feeling of being able to see someone's notebooks like this.
Exactly that. Like you turn the pages, and in those little scenes where we're turning the pages, that's the paper so dry, isn't it? It's so, I just felt, my goodness, you can see the thinking. I love that this is the first time this material has been filmed. The archive was in St Andrews for a long time, and it's come back to Edinburgh. So there's still the unboxing to do. The discoveries are still happening. But to see, particularly in some of those notebooks, she's really thinking through some of her religious thought, her Christian ideas, but also other stuff, as we touch in the film, and I was slightly mesmerized by it, to see, this is a window in a world of a brain which was, let's say, obsessive, because these notebooks aren't only about music or color, there are like shopping lists in there. There's her different interests in language. She was obsessively capturing her daily existence, which is really interesting, like a desire to capture what it's like to feel alive and everything, you know, like from spiritual level to very practical things.
To buying the bread and the milk.
Buying the bread and milk.
One thing I love, the film can be quite cerebral and nearly spiritual, but then it's also quite a physical act of filmmaking, I think, because you're going to a lot of the places where she was, including the Alps. Can you tell me the experience of shooting there, of why you needed to go there? I'm sure you could have hired some idiot with a drone to shoot a generic glacier for you. That's not the kind of filmmaker you are. But what was it like going to some of these places? And I know with the glacier, that's quite tricky to film in those kind of circumstances, right?
Yeah, it was terrible. It was really awful. You know, I've got a massive fear of heights, and so, you know, the glacier, when Willie went there, the glacier was huge and close to the village, and now it's shrunk so substantially that it's a rump event, and so you have to climb, you know, like 2 kilometers on a vertiginous slope, you know, so it's like it's sort of 30 minutes and you have to hold on to a rope and there's a half a kilometer drop. It was really terrifying, and I really hated it, and I think it's had an impact on my ability to, you know, even walk across a bridge, so that, which is not good. But when you actually get to a glacier, this is the first time I'd been on one, and I'm sure many of you have been on glaciers. I've subsequently been on quite a few, but I immediately felt what she felt, like you're not standing on a solid thing. It's mobile, it's translucent, it's blue and green, it's got this sort of rock surface on the top. It's you can hear it, you know, the clicking, and the cracking, you know, an aquatic world, you know. So I completely understood why she felt that her, you know, this idea of the sensorium, your overall body response to something, I could completely understand why she was overwhelmed.
And also just going to Cornwall and those places and doing, I think some are like shot for shot of a view she painted. And did you find that quite a special moment?
Yeah, it's interesting coming from the north. You know, I'm Irish, coming from Scotland to go down to Cornwall. There are loads of, you know, it's warm, which we don't do up north as much, you know, and yet some of the light is similar, you know, some of the bays are similar. If anybody's been to like Harris or Lewis or the Outer Hebrides, you think, oh God, there's a resonance here, you know. So you can see that this woman who went down to the southwest to escape some things also found a kind of home.
Echoes of home there. And your good friend Tilda Swinton narrates this. Did she know Willie's work already, and why was it a project she wanted to get involved in?
I just messaged Tilda and said, look, I'm doing a film about Willie Barns-Graham, and she immediately got back and said, I'm on fire for Wilhelmina Barns-Graham, you know. So, you know, Tilda's partner John Byrne was a great painter, and I think they both loved Willie's work, you know, so it was very nice to hear that, you know, Tilda is so brilliant that of course she knew about Willie, you know, but it was very nice to the idea that she would lend her voice to that in a way, and it was recorded on her iPhone.
Oh, you can't tell it's on an iPhone. I guess it still sounds pretty good. I know this audience is going to have some questions for Mark. And we also have, as we said, Selena, who's a trustee at the Willie's Trust. So if anybody has a question, do you want to shout it out and I can repeat it? Would that work well? You've got a roving microphone. How special. Is anybody brave enough, or I'll keep going for a minute? Oh, we've got one right in the front.
On a very basic level, who approached who? Did you approach the trust, or did the trust approach you?
It's social media is the answer to that. As a fanboy of Willie, I went up to St Andrews and I stood with a picture, the book by Lynn Green, and I said, "Look, I'm here with the place where this woman lived." And then the trust saw this on social media and said, "Do you want to come down and see her work?" And I went down and I was amazed. And so I can't remember exactly who said to who in that moment, maybe we should make a film, but I could feel, shall we say, the stirrings, kind of something inside said, "Oh God, I have to do this," because I had really loved her work, but I didn't know that so much of her work was in Edinburgh. So it quite quickly it became clear that this might be an idea to make something.
And I assume you had creative control, and the trust wasn't trying to.
No, yeah, complete creative control.
Another one. Oh, there's we can.
Okay,
it's like a family.
Thank you so much for making that film. It was extraordinary and quite emotional to watch. I was curious about the section towards the end when older Willie's talking back to herself, and she talks about happiness, and I just was curious to know what inspired that conversation that you wrote, and the reason I'm interested is because she's my great aunt, and she once told me I'd never be an artist because I was too happy.
Oh my gosh!
Are you Eleanor?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it just kind of that bit was just quite extraordinary to watch. So I was quite curious to know, how that happened.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. And I want to talk to you afterwards, or if you have any, if you pardon.
Oh, wow.
Who else is here?
Well, Peter, Jackie.
Oh wow!
And okay, that's exciting. I feel that you should be on stage.
I
not
know.
me,
I was going to say.
On the happiness thing, that's really interesting. So what I said in that particular piece was, this is an older woman looking back at her younger self, or an older person looking back at their younger self, saying, you're happier than I am, but I'm a better artist than you are because I've seen more. This is, partly my own experience of life, as a person getting older. I can look back at my own younger self and think, wow, you don't know what's coming. A lot of it's very, very good, but that happiness point, I think, is a good one. I think if you a lot of bereavements, Willie went through a lot of stuff. Obviously, she was, as you know, and you guys know more than me, she was unwell a lot of the time. She had lots of breathing issues and things like that, and her her marriage broke down and things, and so she must have had a kind of sadness, and yet I think her work gets better. Doesn't it? I think it gets better. You can see her getting more brave. She was always brave, but she got bolder and bolder. And I think that's what I was trying to say in that moment. And that particular work that you're referring to, which played in the fruit market in Edinburgh, is going to Shanghai next next month, actually. And we're putting on in a huge gallery in Shanghai. So I think this might be the first time that Willie's work is presented in China. Do you think? Yeah. In Hong Kong, yeah, but yeah. So, wow. Can we have we chat afterwards?
Amazing.
Yeah,
I've got goosebumps. Can we see this installation ever? Is it after Shanghai? Could it come to London?
It'd be lovely. We're hoping
Let's
that there's another venue in Scotland who's committed to it up in Shetland and Mariel, which is a brilliant thing. But if there are any gallery people here, I think it works as it's a 15-minute event, and it works. It had quite an impact when it played in Scotland. So if anybody wanted to show it in London, we'd be delighted.
Great. Are there more comments or questions? I can't see because of the light. Yes, there's. You have.
Thank you, Mark.
that was a beautiful and very striking film. And I
Thank
come
you.
as a Mark Cousins fan and didn't know anything about the artist, and now I just want to consume all of her work.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
thank you. I think this is maybe more of a comment, but I was quite struck by maybe a similarity between Willie's encounter with the glacier and Nan Shepherd, the walker and writer's
Absolutely.
relationship with the Cairngorms, and how
Absolutely.
she talks about going not up the mountain, and the sort of male writers would write about getting to the top, and Nan Shepherd would write about going into the mountain. And I think you said into the, not just looking down. Willie didn't just look down, but looked into the glacier. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Just to agree with what you say, you know, I'm a huge fan of Nan Shepherd and her writing, and that sense that you're not trying to conquer something. I think is that, you know, you're not trying to overwhelm something. You know, and I think the thing when you see what Willie did, that when she goes to Venice, she thinks, oh, there's nothing to paint here. When she goes to the Alps, initially she says, there's nothing to paint here. The Alps, the fucking Alps, and there's nothing to paint here. And it's because she's not looking at the grand narrative. She's interested in something more geometric and beneath her feet, etc. I should mention that there's a lovely book that's just come out last week, published, which is, if you're interested in particularly the glacier work, this one has just come out, and it talks about it's got all the glacier pictures, and there are essays by, you know, art historians and glaciologists, etc. And there's an essay by me. But if you're interested in that, but I think you're quite right. It's you're not trying to conquer. You know, you're trying to. What Joseph Campbell called the rapture of self-loss. You're trying to lose yourself in the complexity of nature. I think that's what she had.
Beautiful. Was there another hand up back there? Maybe not. I can ask one or two. Anybody else? Yes? Yeah. Oh, and then, yeah.
Thanks very much indeed, Mark. That was absolutely wonderful. I sort of first picked up her work in St Ives ages ago, of the later, prints of the later material. It wasn't really until the Hatton retrospective.
What a brilliant show! Did anybody else see the Hatton show? It wasn't that brilliant.
And I had no idea of her variety
until
that, which you brought out wonderfully in the film. So that was fantastic. I just wonder, in the St Ives period and community, you mentioned obviously the attitude of the male artist, the spirit of competition, etc. You also, of course, have Barbara Hepworth as a possibly now the most famously well-known St Ives artist. That relationship, was there a relationship, or was it at all tense, supportive? How did that work?
It was tense. Would you be happy to answer that? It was tense, but I think Selena can answer better.
It was, I mean, they did have a good relationship, but in the way that art history was written at the time, if you did one women artist and that was Barbara, that was enough in terms of the press, and, Barbara was a tough character. I mean, she had really fought for that position, and then having got it, she wasn't going to hand it over or share it. But Willie and her did have, they did get on. It wasn't that they weren't friends, but in that time, there was only room for, if there was any room for one woman artist, then Barbara was going to, make sure that was her. And I think there are some bits that, if people want to see more of Willie's work, there's an amazing website that the Trust has. There's just the Barns-Graham Trust, and you can explore the archive. You can see lots of the paintings, and I think she would be amazed. And for me, just seeing those things large scale and blown up, they are such strong works. I think we really hope more people will discover her and explore her art through this. So I think it's a really fantastic job that Mark has done for the Trust and for Willie.
And if anybody has more money than me, Selena was saying that Christie's has 3 pieces.
No.
Christmas is coming, Mark. Was there another? Yes. Give me.
Hi. I read your film also as an environmental film. and I was wondering if it had intention from the start or more of an aftermath of.
Sorry, say that again. Hold the microphone slightly closer.
Yeah, sorry. I read your film as an environmental film as well,
yeah.
and I'm wondering if this aspect is an aftermath of the film or something that intentionally you embedded in throughout the process.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted people to be moved by the fact that glaciers are gone, but you can. It's good to be quite light, have a quite light touch about that, So I wanted people to sort of slightly fall in love with her brain, her imagination, and then just when you think, okay, I've got this, then you drop in the environmental aspect, and if you drop it in reasonably lightly, there's the possibility of a kind of outrage, because this is an atrocity what has happened to the glacier, so you just want to do it in a light way. But yes, it is. I think that she, the fact that she went to these famous places and didn't look like most people looked, then it lets us see nature with fresh eyes, I think.
I think one more. We'll do one more and then I'll kick us out, maybe.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that film. What a beautiful kind of poetic meditation on Willie's work. Really a delight to see. I'm really struck by the remark that after the glacier it was Orkney, and I did a residency at Link's House there at Bercy where Willie was, in a studio called the Wilhelmina Barns-Graham studio. So thank you very much. I'm going back next year and I can't wait. It really left a very deep impression. And I really wondered if there was anything that you knew or maybe the family knows about why she ended up going to Orkney, like what that was. Was she drawn there? What was the story behind it?
Well, I'll give my simple answer. I'm sure you've got better answers. She was going for, I think, 2 days or something like that.
Wow.
And then she stayed for 35 days or something like that. Yeah,
that's more like it.
Yeah, so she was invited to do something. Yeah. Selena, have you a fuller answer to that? Or
Well, I was going to say about Margaret Gardner as well, and that
Margaret Gardner,
of course,
and that sort of connection between St Ives and Orkney as well. So there was. And it's again, that's something about the light, and it's just a very special place. I think when people go there, they fall in love with it, and once they've been there once, they want to stay or go back.
Yeah, I'm going back.
So Mark, other than the tattoo, which we've seen, is it in a place? It's just up there, right? You can show. So you keep this with you for the rest of your life. Do you think you'll take anything from your study of Willie's way of seeing the world or her outlook? Will you take some of her with you forward in life?
Yes, definitely. The sense of the indefatigability, the unstoppable. She couldn't not make art. And I have tendencies in that direction myself. I
think so.
I use the word infection, so that's crucial for me. The previous film I made before this was about the rise of Mussolini, which is a horrible film to make. And then to live in the Willie world where she was unstoppable, regardless of fashion. She wasn't really trying to track fashion at all, as we mentioned, she just kept on going. The compulsion to make
art,
the compulsion to make.
I love it. I want to say, first of all, thank you to the Garden Cinema, which does such amazing programming, and great to have this film on a Sunday night.
What a brilliant contribution to London film culture.
It really is.
Bravo to all those people. Bravo.
And thank you all for being here late on a Sunday night to talk about art and film. I love it. Also, thank you to Conic, who is the distributor, who really only does great films. They really do. So, and they are going to release this film into more cinemas this coming Friday, the 18th. So tell your friends, go see it again. Opening weekends do matter to independent films. So have another look at Willie. And thank you hugely to Mark Cousins for telling us a little bit more about how you made the film. And I hope there's a great family reunion outside in just a minute. Thank you, everybody.